It begins softly, with eyes that do not ask permission, with laughter that lingers just a second longer than it should, with the gentle intoxication of being seen. You believe this is how love begins, not with calculation, but with the trembling recognition of goodness in another soul. The way a quiet man offers protection without demand. The way he listens without seeking advantage. The way he gives, fully, foolishly, with the purity of someone who still believes kindness is currency in the world of desire. But kindness is not what is wanted. Not truly. Not beneath the surface. Not in the places where the ache turns to fire. He offers stability. She craves intoxication. He offers honesty. She wants mystery. He offers protection. She longs for danger. And so the story begins again, not with betrayal, but with the quieter cruelty of disinterest. The kind that doesn't scream. The kind that simply forgets you. The good man, the one who tries to be gentle, reliable, sincere, will one day find himself alone in a room, wondering why she never truly saw him. He will ask himself, was I not enough? And he will not hear the answer, because the answer is obscene. In the theater of desire, goodness does not inspire longing. It inspires safety. And safety is the death of lust. Nietzsche understood this. In a world where we praise virtue and celebrate moral integrity, he dared to expose a darker symmetry, that desire is not born from admiration, but from tension. It is not the halo that draws the eye, but the shadow. She will never say this aloud. Few women will. Perhaps they don't even realize it themselves. They've been taught that they want the kind man, the honest one, the giver, the protector. But their bodies do not lie. Their choices, repeated again and again in the silence of the night, expose something far more ancient. They are not drawn to virtue. They are drawn to power. And power wears many faces. It can be charm without commitment, confidence without conscience. It can be danger hidden beneath a grin. It can be indifference, that cold, delicious poison that makes her try just a little harder to be seen. The good man cannot compete with this. He does not play the game because he does not know there is one. He believes love is about transparency, about sharing. He does not understand that mystery is what binds, not clarity. That withholding is more erotic than giving. That distance seduces more than closeness ever could. And so he loses. Not in a dramatic way, but in the slow erosion of attention. In the way her messages grow shorter. In the way she begins to forget his name, even as he whispers hers in his sleep. He does not know how to be cruel, and that is his curse. Nietzsche did not write to comfort men like this. He wrote to strip away their illusions, to tell them, without apology, that their suffering is not noble. It is predictable, that they are not martyrs. They are fools. The world does not punish goodness because it is evil. It punishes goodness because it is boring. And yet, there is something beautiful in the fool who still believes. Something tragic. Something holy. He walks into the fire again and again, knowing it will burn, hoping it will warm. He loves without armor. And so he bleeds. Is there any redemption for such a man? Perhaps not. Perhaps his only salvation lies in awakening, in learning to carry his goodness like a secret, not an offering, and letting the light inside him become quiet, sharp, and unbending. To be good in this world is not enough. One must also be dangerous, not to others, but to despair. Nietzsche's truth is a blade, and it cuts through every comforting lie, that if you love well, you will be loved, that if you give, you will receive, that sincerity is enough to ignite desire. It isn't. The world of love is not a church. It is a storm, and those who walk into it without shelter will be struck again and again, not because they are bad, but because they were never meant to be there. And so the question remains, will you continue offering your heart like a lamb? Or will you learn to stand with your back to the wind, silent, knowing, refusing to beg for what should be freely given? She will never love you for your goodness. But perhaps, if you stop needing her love, she will begin to wonder. Perhaps mystery is not just for the wicked. Perhaps goodness can learn to wear a mask, not to deceive, but to survive. It happens slowly, like rust on metal. At first, he doesn't notice. A delay in her reply. A gaze that no longer lingers. The warm gravity of her affection dissolves not into hatred, but into absence. Indifference is colder than cruelty, and that is what she offers now. He sits with it, not with rage, not with pride, but with confusion, as if something must have gone wrong that he cannot name. He replays their conversations in his head, looks for a misstep, wonders if perhaps he should have said less, offered less, needed less. He doesn't yet understand that it was the very act of needing that sealed his fate. Nietzsche, watching from the grave, would say, of course. Of course she drifted. Of course she left. She smelled something too familiar, too human, too honest. And that, to the wild core of her being, is intolerable. Desire is not born in peace. It blooms in tension, in distance, in the unreachable. When a man gives everything, he leaves her with nothing to want. And so she turns her gaze elsewhere, searching again for that pulse of uncertainty, the thrill of maybe, the sting of almost. The gentle man does not understand this. How could he? His love is a confession, not a strategy. He offers his soul not as a weapon, but as a gift. And he cannot comprehend how a gift can become repulsive. But it does. The more he gives, the less she feels. The safer he becomes, the less alive she feels in his presence. She wanted to drown, not be rescued. She wanted to ache, not be understood. In his presence, she feels like a saint. And saints do not burn with longing. There is something brutal in this alchemy, a reversal of all the myths. He believed, as many do, that love is made of goodness, of compassion, attentiveness, presence. But Nietzsche knew better. He saw the darker undercurrent, the truth polite society cannot say, that beneath the smile is a hunger for chaos, and beneath the tenderness a thirst for domination. What woman has not felt the primal thrill of the one who withholds, the one who vanishes and returns, who never explains, who always remains just out of reach? He who stirs pain, and in doing so, awakens something ancient, something that goodness cannot touch. To be desired is not to be cherished. It is to be unsettled. And this is where the gentle man dies, not with a scream, but in silence. He fades not because he lacks worth, but because he is too available, too known, too certain. She never meant to destroy him. She doesn't even notice the funeral happening in his chest. She moves on, light as wind, seeking again the scent of danger, a new face, a new mask, another incomplete man to project her mythology onto. And he, left behind, begins the slow decomposition of self-worth. He doubts his kindness, curses his sincerity, wonders if perhaps he must become cruel to be seen. But he cannot. He is not made for cruelty. And so he breaks. This, Nietzsche would say, is the fate of the unawakened man, the one who believes that virtue is enough. He is not wrong to be good, but he is wrong to be only good. The world, as it is, does not respect purity unless it is shrouded in mystery, in silence, in distance. What is revealed too soon loses its sacredness, and what is offered without pride is consumed without reverence. There is no beauty in what is too easily possessed, no worship in what asks for nothing. And so the gentle man must learn a new language, not of deceit, but of restraint. He must become a shadow, not a spotlight. A question, not an answer. Not for her, but for himself. Because goodness, to endure, must also be sovereign. It must not kneel. It must not explain itself. This is the rebirth Nietzsche offers, harsh, unsentimental, but redemptive. Let the man remain kind, but let him wrap that kindness in silence. Let him wear his light like a blade, not a prayer. Let him vanish when unappreciated. Let him leave when he is not seen. He must become myth. Only then will he be desired, not pitied, not tolerated, but longed for. The gentle man who suffers in plain sight becomes a martyr, but the one who vanishes into legend becomes a mystery. And it is mystery that seduces. It is absence that ignites imagination. It is distance that creates the sacred. Let the good man die, and in his place, let a quieter, sharper man be born, one who still believes in love, but no longer begs for it, one who still gives, but never all at once, one who still sees clearly, but keeps some visions for himself. This is not manipulation. It is survival. It is poetry written in the blood of disappointment. He will no longer explain why he left. He will no longer defend why he was kind. He will no longer stay to prove he is enough. He will simply vanish. And one day, far from now, she may remember him, not as the man who was too much, but as the man who disappeared before she understood what she had. And she will ache. But by then, he will belong to the silence, where all sacred things dwell. Look around. The streets are filled with men who once believed love was enough. They walk slowly now, not from age, but from weight. The weight of unspoken stories, of confessions that found no ear, of tenderness that dried in the sun of indifference. You can see them in coffee shops, bookstores, park benches. They are not loud. They are not broken. They are fading. There is a particular silence to a man who once gave everything. A hush in his eyes. A retreat behind every smile. Not because he fears the world, but because he knows it too well. He has seen what happens when a man opens his heart in a world that worships spectacle but crucifies sincerity. It is not evil that destroyed him. It is apathy. Society doesn't ask for good men anymore. It wants images, narratives, sharp suits and sharper wit, confidence dressed as arrogance. Kindness has no market value. Vulnerability has no algorithm. The man who feels deeply must bury it. The man who listens too much must learn to interrupt. The man who still believes in the sacred must become fluent in irony. What was once a virtue is now a liability. And so the good man fractures, not with rage, but with forgetting. He forgets how to trust, how to speak, how to want. His affections curl inward, like leaves before frost. He learns to withhold not out of malice, but out of mercy, mercy for a self that can no longer afford to bleed freely. You may ask, where do these men go? They vanish. They stop dating. They stop confessing. They stop hoping. Some disappear into their work. Others into silence. Some wear sarcasm like armor. Others pretend not to care. And some, the most haunted of them all, still carry the wound as a question. Why was I not enough? This is the ghost that walks beside them. Not bitterness, but bewilderment. The gentle man was not trying to win. He was trying to be known. And what he received in return was exile. There is no ceremony for this kind of death. No burial. No mourning. It is not dramatic enough for the world to notice. But it happens all the same, in quiet apartments, behind kind smiles, beneath long hours and unread messages. It happens in the way his voice lowers when he speaks of love, in the way he laughs without joy, in the way he avoids her eyes. Nietzsche would not comfort this man. He would demand his resurrection, not back into naivete, but into fire, into form, into a man who no longer performs virtue for validation, but one who embodies it in silence, without apology. But the road from death to dignity is not marked. It is lonely. It is steep, and most will not walk it. Most will remain half alive, good men hiding in plain sight, afraid to be seen again for who they are. They begin to mirror the very world that wounded them. Detached, dispassionate, unavailable, and women notice. They begin to ask, where have all the good men gone? They do not know they buried them. They do not see the graves they helped dig, not out of cruelty, but out of instinct. The desire for the unreachable, the hunger for the chase, the magnetic pull of asymmetry. And so begins the great reversal. She who once had love, discarded it, and now, in her own loneliness, begins to long for what she cannot find. She writes essays about emotional intelligence, posts about vulnerability, speaks of the rare man who listens, who feels, who protects. But when he arrives again, sincere, present, whole, something in her recoils. Not because he is wrong, but because he is too real. And reality is not romantic. The myth of love feeds on distance. It needs uncertainty, misalignment, tension. The gentle man offers none of these. He is the ending. And she, still in love with the story, is not ready for the last page. This is not her fault. Nor is it his. It is something older. Something woven into the script of the species, attraction not to comfort, but to contrast. Not to completion, but to conflict. And so, the wheel turns. She misses him only when he no longer waits. He hardens only when he no longer hopes. The dance of timing devours them both. And society, blind to its own design, continues spinning myths about healthy love while worshiping the very patterns that kill it. It celebrates women who finally choose the nice guy after a decade of chaos, as if she is doing him a favor, as if her return is grace. But he is no longer the same. He has learned the sacred lesson that love, when given too soon, becomes invisible. And so he speaks less, offers less, waits longer, watches more, not out of cruelty, but out of memory. He remembers what it cost to be honest. He remembers the silence after the text, the glance that never came back, the slow disintegration of his own faith, and he refuses to pay that price again. This is not bitterness. It is grief, matured into caution. The good man still exists, but you will not find him where you left him. He has gone underground, not to hide, but to grow roots. And when he returns, if he returns, he will not offer himself like a gift. He will be still, and silent, and strong. And the world, unsure what to do with something that does not beg to be loved, will call him distant. But that is the cost of resurrection. It happens not with a roar, but with a sigh. One morning, the man opens his eyes and does not reach for his phone, does not check for messages that never come, does not revisit conversations that ended in silence. He lies there, listening to the quiet, and something within him does not ache. This absence is strange. He does not trust it. It feels like forgetting something precious, like waking from a dream and not remembering the face that once held your breath hostage. He sits up. The morning is gray. Light spills in through half-open blinds, touching the floor in long, deliberate strokes. There is no music, no voice in the hallway, no scent of her. And for the first time, this emptiness does not accuse him. It simply exists. It is here, in this small and forgotten hour, that something begins to shift. Not loudly, not completely, but like a single hairline crack in a frozen lake. He walks to the mirror, looks into eyes he no longer apologizes for. The man he sees is not proud, not invincible, but he is there, fully, without performance, without a mask. And that, somehow, is enough. He makes coffee, eats slowly, watches the steam rise and curl. No distractions, no background noise. The world is still, and so is he. This is the first rebellion, not in words, but in silence, not in movement, but in refusal. Refusal to chase, to explain, to prove. There is no dramatic realization, no revelation scrawled across the sky. Only a soft, heavy clarity that he has been living in the wrong direction, that every step toward her was a step away from himself. And now he stops walking. He does not become cruel. He does not become closed. He simply becomes here, rooted, present, watching the world spin without begging to be caught in its orbit. The ache that once pressed against his ribs like a knife is dulled. Not disappeared, just shifted, like a wound learning how to become scar. He does not check her page anymore, does not scroll through curated lives hoping to feel less alone. He does not ask why. He does not ask anything. He listens. And in that listening, he hears something unfamiliar. Stillness. It is not peace, not yet, but it is close. He begins to notice things, how the sky bruises before rain, how strangers walk like memories, how books whisper truths louder than any conversation ever has. He begins to write again, not to be read, but to remember. He writes letters he will not send, thoughts no one will see, feelings that are his alone, unmarketed, unshared. This solitude is not punishment anymore. It is space, clean and sharp, like winter air. There is no need to fill it, no hunger to be held. He thought he needed her to feel whole, but now he knows he never met her, not truly. He met the story he told himself, the shape he carved in the dark, the mirror he kissed, not knowing it was glass. And he forgives himself for believing, for bending, for waiting. This, too, is part of the shedding. He no longer speaks the language of longing. It feels foreign now, like a dream half remembered. He walks through his days without reaching, without hoping. He watches the sun rise and thinks, I am still here. Not because someone loves him, not because he was chosen, but because he did not disappear. This is the second rebellion. To remain. To remain without being seen. The world moves quickly. It worships speed, image, volume. But he has slipped beneath it now, like water beneath ice. Still flowing. Still alive. He is not numb. He feels everything. But nothing demands a response. This is not victory. It is not closure. It is the space between, where pain no longer defines him, where absence is no longer a question, where memory becomes mist and he walks through it without needing to hold it. He no longer asks, "What did I do wrong?" He no longer whispers, "Come back." Instead, he breathes, and it is enough. This man, this quiet man who once handed his soul like a poem, he is still that man. But now the poem is his to read, to hold, to keep. And perhaps one day, someone will read it and understand. But if they don't, if no one ever does, he will still be here, watching the light move across the floor, slowly, deliberately, not waiting, just awake. It comes quietly, not like a storm, but like dust, settling in corners you forgot to look. It gathers slowly, until one day, the man no longer walks with hope in his hands, but with memory, not of what was, but of what was never true to begin with. This is how illusions die, not in rage, not in flames, but in the soft exhaustion of repetition, of waiting, of trying to become enough for someone who never asked to be met, only to be mirrored. She never saw him. Not really. She saw a reflection of her needs, her wounds, her dreams. And when his light stopped reflecting what she craved, she called it dull. She called it wrong. And so he twisted, folded, shrank, made himself palatable, smaller, quieter, sweeter. But now he sees it. The hunger was never for him. It was for the echo he became. And he cannot be an echo anymore. He stands at the edge of himself, looks back, sees the long corridor of compromises, of soft betrayals of his own soul, the jokes he didn't laugh at, the truths he never said, the questions he buried to keep the peace. And he is tired, not of her, not of love, tired of not being seen, tired of being almost enough. The worst lie is the one you tell yourself to keep another person close. He knows this now. He lived it, wore it like second skin. But illusions itch, and lies rot from the inside out. He remembers the early days, the warmth of her gaze, the way her voice curled around his name, how he built temples out of her glances, prayed to the altar of her approval, measured his worth by her smile. But what she wanted was not him. It was the idea of him, the safety, the kindness, the peace, until it became boring, until it became too easy. And he, the man who would have bled just to be held, became a footnote, a backup plan, a Sunday thought. He doesn't hate her. No, hate is too sharp, too alive. What he feels now is something colder, emptier. The echo after a cathedral has emptied. The silence after music stops and no one notices. She moved on, as they always do, not cruelly, not viciously, just without turning back. And he waited for a message, a sign, a memory to return. But it didn't. And now, standing here, he realizes it was never about love. Not in the way he needed, not in the way he offered it. It was about timing, power, projection. She never asked who he really was, never stayed for the storms, never saw the depth, only the surface. And that is what shatters him, not the leaving, but the invisibility. He was good, and it didn't matter. He was honest, and it didn't matter. He was loyal, and it didn't matter. What mattered was the chase, the drama, the absence. He showed up, and that was his mistake. And now, what is left? He sits in the same chair, but the room feels different. Lighter, almost. Like something is lifted. Some burden of performance, of needing to be chosen. He does not cry. Not this time. There is nothing left to cry for. The well has dried, and in its place is something heavier, truth. He thought she was the storm, but he was. He was the one who loved without condition, who stayed when it was inconvenient, who gave what could never be returned. And now, he takes it back, not in anger, but in reclamation. He gathers the parts of himself scattered in texts, in glances, in memories. pulls them back into his chest, closes the door, and breathes. There is no final message, no last plea, no poetic goodbye, only stillness. He lets her go, not the woman, but the myth of her, the image he fed, worshipped, chased. He lets it all dissolve. And in that letting go, something else rises, slowly, like smoke from ash. Himself, not the version she loved, but the one he buried to be loved. He feels him now, this man of quiet storms, of unspoken strength, of unshaken knowing. He is not desperate. He is not broken. He is still here, not as a lesson, not as a symbol, but as a soul, intact, unseen, but never lesser for it. And as he walks out into the gray of morning, something strange happens. The sky does not change. The world is the same, but he is not. He walks without watching his phone. He walks without waiting for her ghost. He walks, and for the first time in a long time, he does not look back. There is a moment after the ache, after the loss, after the unraveling, when everything becomes still. The body no longer flinches at her name. The air no longer hums with the memory of her voice. The silence is no longer hollow. It is whole. He walks slower now, not from pain, but from presence. Every step a conversation with the ground, every breath an agreement with time. He no longer moves to be found. He moves to be. The need to be understood has quieted. He no longer needs to be held to feel real. No longer needs to be wanted to know he exists. He has touched the bottom of absence and did not dissolve. He has lived without applause, and in the silence, found a rhythm more honest than any song. What remains after wanting? A man, not the version sculpted for affection, not the silhouette designed to be chosen, but the one beneath it, the one who stayed when no one else did, the one who listened to the ache until it spoke the truth. He no longer looks for her in strangers, no longer sees her face in the crowd. He no longer imagines what could have been, because he knows what was. And it was enough to end the story. There are no villains here, only mirrors. She reflected what he longed for. He reflected what she feared. The dance was never about truth. It was about hunger. And hunger, once fed by illusion, always leaves the body empty. Now, he eats slower, sleeps deeper, speaks less. There is no need to explain anymore. To be known is not always to be loved, and to be loved is not always to be kept. He does not hate love. He has simply stopped waiting for it to rescue him. There is something sacred in this detachment. Not numbness, never numbness, but a soft refusal to beg for what is freely given in its true form. He has tasted the bitter and found, beneath it, clarity. He walks through familiar streets like ruins of an old faith. Places that once echoed with her absence now sit quietly. They do not ask questions. They do not remember. And he no longer needs them to. Some days, the memory returns not as a wound, but as weather, a shift in the wind, a softness in the light. He feels it and lets it pass. He does not chase it. He does not curse it. He does not wish it back. He simply watches it leave. This is not peace, but it is peace enough. What remains after wanting is not joy, not pride, not vindication. It is space. Space to become. He begins again, not as a lover seeking a name, but as a man seeking nothing. He walks without destination, sleeps without expectation. And in that spaciousness, something grows. Not hope, not belief, but being. He begins to see beauty in what does not last. The way sunlight touches broken glass. The way strangers laugh without knowing he is watching. The way time slips through the fingers, soft as breath, relentless as tide. He speaks to no one about this. There are no words for this kind of quiet. Only eyes that see differently. Only hands that no longer reach. Only a heart that no longer asks, will she come back? She won't. And it's okay. Because what remains after wanting is not less, it is more. More room. More silence. More truth. The kind of truth that doesn't need to be spoken. The kind that sits with you at night, says nothing, and still answers everything. He still believes in love. But not the kind that burns quickly, or promises loudly, or needs to be won. He believes in the love that arrives unannounced, does not demand, does not break, does not beg to be felt. If it comes, it will sit beside him, not above him, not beneath him, beside him. But he does not wait for it. He simply walks. He simply breathes. And in that breath, in that step, in that stillness, is the man. The whole one. The quiet one. The one who stayed.